If she thinks that this is justice, she's making a mockery out of your court system.
That's right.
The person who cold-bloodedly murdered my son is getting off with probation.
We are witnesses to the collapse of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office.
2022, Mary Moriarty, a 30-year veteran public defender, pulled off an election victory to become Hennepin County Attorney.
And what do you plan to do differently?
Well, I'm very honored and proud to be Hennepin County Attorney, and I'm really pleased that the voters in Hennepin County rejected the politics of fear, which I think the fear part was trying to convince people that we need to continue to do the same failed policies of the past.
She went from defending the accused to being responsible for prosecuting them. She has consistently failed victims in the state of Minnesota since the time that she took office. You've likely heard about one or more of her terrible decisions, but I have compiled several of the worst ones here. The cases and decisions I highlight in this video are just from her first year and a half as county attorney. Almost as soon as she took office in January 2023, victims' families and even some of her prosecutors realized that she was a mistake. They rightly accused Moriarty of being lenient on all offenders, but especially violent juvenile offenders. One of the earliest examples of this was the ZARIA MCKEEVER case. Two teens aged 15 and 17 were charged with second-degree murder for shooting a young mother, ZARIA MCKEEVER, in Brooklyn Park. Moriarty offered plea deals that would see them serve just 18 to 24 months in a juvenile facility, with probation after that until they were 21. Governor Tim Walz stepped in and reassigned the case to the Attorney General's office under Keith Ellison.
Major shakeup in a high-profile murder case.
For only the second time in state history, the governor used his power to put a new prosecutor in charge. Two teenagers are accused of killing ZARIA MCKEEVER. A plea deal with the new Hennepin County attorney meant they could have avoided going to prison. But now the Attorney General is taking over.
Governor Tim Walz called ZARIA's family personally this evening and broke the news to them. Having Keith Ellison take over the prosecution of this case is what they prayed for, and they say this is a victory that gives them hope for justice.
We were screaming at the top of our lungs when we heard. It was just a breath of fresh air. You know, it's just like we were able to breathe a little bit right now.
MCKEEVER was killed last year in her Brooklyn Park apartment. Investigators say on the order of her ex-boyfriend, Eric Haynes, two teenagers broke in, one of whom is accused of shooting her multiple times. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty chose not to prosecute the teens as adults, offering plea deals that would have them released after a couple years in a juvenile program. Ellison disagrees with the decision.
The disposition the county attorney has proposed for this juvenile who was the shooter in this heinous crime is inappropriate.
With the case taken away from her, Moriarty stood by her decision, saying in part, it gives us the best chance to protect public safety by investing in rehabilitation while still having accountability. The people of this county elected me to make that difficult call. Moriarty says Ellison's takeover should alarm prosecutors across the state because it threatens the very core of their role as an elected official accountable to the people.
There's hope, and there's hope for other people. I hope this gives them hope.
Throughout 2023, similar complaints piled up. She offered probation for teens charged with murder during a carjacking, a drug dealer linked to a fentanyl overdose death, even adults accused of serious sexual assaults.
She was hired to be a prosecutor, and a prosecutor's job is to prosecute people. She wants to continue to act as if she's the public defender.
Harsh criticism for Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, the family of a man killed in a deadly carjacking attempt.
It just shows how little justice seems to care about victims.
So sending him to prison, based on everything we know, will create more trauma and make him likely to be more dangerous when he gets out.
A surprise twist in a case that we've been following for years. A young man accused in an armed carjacking that turned deadly could now be headed to trial. As part of a controversial plea deal, he would have avoided prison time. But in a rare move today, a judge said not so fast.
It doesn't make sense to our family at all. The person who cold-bloodedly murdered my son is getting off with probation. And why? Because he's a whole new man.
Begging the judge to reject a plea deal that would have put 20-year-old Hussein Braveheart on probation instead of nearly 22 years in prison for aiding and abetting murder.
My reaction to the plea agreement: we are witnesses to the collapse of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office.
Loudly criticizing Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty and through tears calling this plea deal a disgrace to the justice system.
I know judges don't often reject negotiated pleas, but this is the negotiated plea to reject.
Moriarty's office had justified the deal, saying Braveheart was a lesser part of the crime, that he was an accomplice that day in 2019, and that he had made progress in rehabilitation. But the judge said Braveheart also fired shots at Markey, that he supplied the guns, and he cast doubt on his actual progress while in custody.
I am not accepting Mr. Braveheart's guilty plea at this time.
Hussein Braveheart, a man who took a controversial plea deal for a deadly carjacking, is now accused of driving more than 100 miles an hour while fleeing police in a stolen vehicle.
Fox 9's Rob Olson is live in Minneapolis for us tonight with this story. Rob, you spoke with the family of the carjacking victim, the initial one, and they say they're not surprised by this at all.
No, they say they are not surprised. They were basically expecting that Braveheart would reoffend. They're thankful that no one was injured here. But this is a case that is, of course, renewed criticism for Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who defended Braveheart's leniency.
I don't think anyone was surprised by this, except maybe the Hennepin County attorney.
Kristen Darastory said she cried when she learned Hussein Braveheart had been arrested again in a stolen vehicle after fleeing police at more than 100 miles an hour.
I think most people, including my family, were waiting for him to reoffend and just hoping that it wouldn't be serious and cause another loss of life.
5 years ago, Kristen's cousin, Stephen Markey, was killed during an attempted carjacking in Minneapolis when Braveheart and another man, Jared Osmond, both shot at Markey as he tried to drive away. Osmond got 20 years in prison because prosecutors said it was his bullet that killed Markey.
I apologize for not being a better person that day.
But Braveheart wound up getting a plea deal late last year that dropped his charge to assault and let him walk with no prison time. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty defended the leniency at that time in the face of very heavy criticism. The Markey family was furious then, still deeply hurt now.
You can see it coming, right? We knew he would get in trouble again. The odds were in his favor of doing that, even though you'd hope for something else. It was uniquely painful to find out what happened. But I'm also really relieved that no one else was injured as a result of his crimes this time.
Okay, we passed that, so where we at then? So where are we at then? But when you say step out of the vehicle, you gonna explain to me, and then y'all say, get out of the car now!
Hold on. Give me some guys. Give me some guys. I don't have a pulse. I'm gonna start CPR.
Then came the Ryan LANDREGAN case, a high-profile prosecution that became Moriarty's biggest misstep. In September of 2023, Moriarty announced that she would be considering charging Minnesota State Trooper Ryan LANDREGAN for the shooting death of Ricky Cobb II during a traffic stop. By January of 2024, she did charge him.
This morning, we filed a criminal complaint against Minnesota State Highway Patrol Trooper Ryan LANDREGAN, charging him with 3 counts in the death of Ricky Cobb II. He is charged with second-degree murder, unintentional, first-degree assault, and second-degree manslaughter. As with all Minnesota law enforcement officers, state troopers may only use deadly force when it is necessary to protect a person from a specific, identified threat of great bodily harm or death that was reasonably likely to occur. That did not exist in this case. We were able to determine that charges were appropriate in this charge without the use of an expert.
The fact that there is no expert tells me that there is likely no expert that would agree with her conclusion that the officer should be charged with murder.
New tonight, questions about the Hennepin County Attorney's decision to charge a state trooper with murder. Last summer, prosecutors charged Ryan Landregan in the deadly traffic stop of Ricky Cobb II. Landregan's legal team claims a use of force expert used in several other high-profile state cases told prosecutors early on that the shooting was justified if Landregan was trying to protect his partner. Information they say was ignored.
Paul Bloom takes a look at how this could impact the case.
Charges were appropriate without the use of an expert.
When Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty outlined her office's decision to charge State Trooper Ryan Landregan with killing Ricky Cobb II during a traffic stop, she explained that prosecutors made the call without the input of a use of force expert.
I'm just going to go a driver's side approach.
At the time, the announcement turned heads, as her office had previously stated it had picked out an expert and that their independent review was a critical part of the process to determine whether charges were in fact warranted. Well, now months later, in this 52-page defense filing, Trooper Landregan's legal team believes they have figured out why that expert was not ultimately used. That is because they believe the expert, Jeffrey Noble, a leading national voice in the field who consulted with local prosecutors in the police killings of George Floyd and Philando Castile, had opined that Landregan may be justified in shooting Cobb if Landregan perceived his fellow trooper was in harm's way.
It seems to me that based on the evidence now that exists as a matter of law, you cannot get a conviction on this case. So I might even consider dismissing the case if I were the judge.
I'm not a lawyer myself, but as a layman on this, why would you not listen to a use of force expert? Why would that not be central to something you would do? And I think the allegations, and I will say if there are allegations at this time, release documents and let us know.
It's a signed deal. A Washington, D.C. based law firm will take over the prosecution of Minnesota State Trooper Ryan Landregan.
Landregan is charged with murder for the death of Ricky Cobb II. The contract, signed by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, agrees to pay up to $1 million to the firm and possibly even more.
We just don't have the resources right now to be able to pull the experienced lawyers to be able to handle what is a resource-intensive case.
Citing staffing issues, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty is bringing on 4 new prosecutors from out of state to handle the prosecution of Minnesota State Trooper Ryan Landregan. The team from D.C.-based Steptoe LLC is led by Karima Maloney, a former federal prosecutor with experience handling complex investigations, according to her bio. The contract, released by Moriarty Friday, shows Steptoe agreed to terms of $850 per hour up to a $1 million cap. But the final cost is hard to predict.
It really isn't just $1 million. It could be far more than that.
Twin Cities-based attorney Marsh Hallberg points out the agreement states that once the amount of fees has exceeded $750,000, Steptoe will inform Moriarty, and she will have to ask the Hennepin County Board for authority to pay more money.
So it's kind of an open checkbook at that point.
Commissioner Jeff Lundy raised that concern at this week's meeting.
Are we going to get halfway through a case and you're like, okay, we got to have another $1 million, and would that be something we would approve later? That's what I'm trying to understand is, because a commitment today means we're in.
What I can guarantee you is that I take fiscal responsibility very seriously as well, as I know you do, and we will be on top of this.
Moriarty will maintain decision-making power. Today in a statement, she said in part, these former federal prosecutors with impeccable credentials will be singularly focused on this case, while the rest of our team continues the critical work of prosecuting the high volume of other serious cases that are central to safety in our community.
Now there's just no good comparison for us to make because this situation is unprecedented. The outside lawyers in the Derek Chauvin case work for free, but $1 million would pay the full salary of 6 prosecutors in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for 1 year at the top of the pay scale.
The
legal news, murder charges dropped against the state trooper who shot and killed Ricky Cobb II last summer. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty said she decided to drop these charges because of new evidence, she said, that came in. But she thinks she was right to charge Landregan 6 months ago based on the evidence she said she had at the time.
And the expert witnesses in use of force cases focus pretty much only on those seconds when the shots happened and what a reasonable officer could have perceived. So when we got this information, we had to assess what it meant for the case. And we took the new evidence to a use of force expert whose analysis led us to include that based on that new evidence, we would no longer be able to succeed at trial. Why is it appropriate for a governor who has never picked up the phone to call me, who is not a lawyer, who does not understand the nuances of this case, to talk about it publicly, to center Mr. Landregan as being the victim in this case?
Today, Governor Walz spoke out about the case, saying he would have taken the case from the Hennepin County attorney if they had not reached the conclusion that this case was not winnable.
At some point, had this decision not been made, that yes, we would have done that. I also say that they don't take it lightly. I think that is the wrong. It should not be that way, but there is a safety net in there to allow an egregious situation like this to be corrected, and yes, we would have used that to do that.
So first of all, what I heard today is, oh my gosh, there was all this new evidence that the defense team put in front of us. We had no idea that Ryan Landregan was actually acting to save a partner. This was the notice of defense that we filed with the court on the day that Ryan Landregan was charged. January 24, 2024. What did it say? As will be shown at trial, if trial proves to be necessary, because frankly, I put that parentheses in there just because of this. I didn't think that anybody, frankly, could be dumb enough to pursue this case this long. Trooper Landregan employed the use of deadly force against Ricky Cobb to protect, one, Trooper Brett Seide from death and or great bodily harm, and secondarily, himself from death and or great bodily harm. Was there something ambiguous about this? No. The county attorney's office had this from day one with respect to this case. And for her to come out now and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that the defense was hiding this great evidence, is just plain absurd. This county attorney was hell-bent on prosecuting a cop. She could not wait for a case like this to come up. And it would have made zero difference. Look at all the facts that we gave here. I have 5 sworn declarations from existing troopers, 2 other paid experts, and Noble, their own experts, saying that, and she still went forward. And now we're saying, oh boy, had I known that, what I know now, it's garbage. That's all I have. In summary, what I saw today at that press conference was delusional and it was unhinged. And it was remarkably unfair to my client. He deserves an apology. He deserves an adult to stand up and say, you know what? I messed up since day one. I made a major mistake. And instead, he got somebody trying to try the case in the press again at the same time that she's dismissing it.
And that was in just her first year and a half in office. I'm Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile.